The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every corner of the known universe had heard the story. The riddle that had stood unsolved for 3,000 years had finally been answered. And it had been answered by a human. Una became famous overnight. Her face appeared on screens across thousands of planets. Reporters and journalists from every species wanted to interview her. Scientists and philosophers wanted to study her. World leaders and galactic politicians wanted to meet her. But Una did not care about fame. She just wanted to call her parents. She sat in her small room in the academy dormitory, looking at the communication screen. The signal would take several minutes to reach Earth and several more minutes for the response to come back. But she did not mind waiting. Her mother's face appeared on the screen, tired and confused. It was the middle of the night in Korea. Una? What is wrong? Why are you calling so late? Mother, I did something today. Something important. Her mother's face showed concern. What did you do? Are you in trouble? Una laughed, tears streaming down her face. No, Mother. I am not in trouble. I solved a riddle. A very old, very famous riddle. And now everyone knows my name. Her mother looked confused for a moment. Then her father appeared on the screen, his hair messy from sleep. What is happening? He asked. Your daughter is famous, Una said. I made you proud, Father. Just like you asked. It took a few more minutes to explain everything. Her parents listened in amazement as Una told them about Varric, about the riddle, about her answer. When she finished, her mother was crying. My daughter, she said. My clever, wonderful daughter. Her father said nothing, but his eyes said everything. Pride, love, joy beyond words dot in the days that followed. Una's life changed in ways she never expected. She was no longer the weak, overlooked human student. She was now the most famous being at the academy. Students who had ignored her before now wanted to be her friend. Teachers who had doubted her now praised her intelligence. But Una did not let the attention change her. She continued to study hard. She continued to spend time with her real friends, Bora and Taiho. She continued to be humble and kind. Taiho had the hardest time accepting what had happened. He had spent 50 years preparing for the riddle, and he had failed. He felt ashamed and angry. One day, Una found him sitting alone in the library, staring at nothing. You are upset, she said, sitting down across from him. Taiho made a bitter sound. You would be upset too, if you had trained your whole life for something and failed. Una thought about this for a moment. I do not think you failed, she said. What do you mean? I gave the wrong answer. That is failure. You gave a wrong answer, Una said. But you also learned something important. You learned that intelligence is not everything. Is that not valuable? Taiho looked at her with his 3 eyes. You speak like Varric now. Una smiled. Maybe I do, but I mean it. You are one of the smartest beings I have ever met. And now you know that being smart is not enough. You need to also be wise. You need to understand not just facts, but feelings. Taiho was quiet for a long time. Then, slowly, he nodded. You are right, he said. I have spent my life learning information, but I have not spent time learning understanding. Perhaps that is what I should do now. Una put her hand on his arm. And you should trust yourself. Trust that you can grow and change and become better. That is the lesson of the riddle, is it not? Taiho looked at her hand on his arm. In his species, physical touch was rare and meaningful. He seemed moved by the gesture. Thank you, Una, he said. You are a good friend. Months passed. The excitement about the riddle slowly faded, replaced by new stories and new events. But the impact of Una's answer remained. Across the galaxy, beings began to talk about trust in new ways. Philosophers wrote papers about the importance of emotional intelligence. Scientists started studying the biology of trust, trying to understand how it worked in different species. Politicians spoke about building trust between worlds and civilizations, and humanity's status in the galaxy changed forever. Before Yuna's answer, humans were seen as a young, primitive species. They were tolerated but not respected. Other species looked down on them, considering them barely evolved animals. But now, everything was different. If a human could understand something that had defeated the greatest minds for 3,000 years, perhaps humans were not so primitive after all. Perhaps there was something special about them, something that other species lacked. Representatives from powerful civilizations came to Earth, wanting to form alliances and partnerships. Trade routes opened up. Technology was shared. Humans began to take their place among the great species of the galaxy. And it all started with a simple answer to a simple riddle. At the end of her 2 years at the academy, Yuna stood once again on the landing platform, waiting for the ship that would take her home. But this time, she was not alone. Hundreds of students had come to say goodbye. Vorik was there too, leaning on his staff, his 6 eyes bright with warmth. "You have done more for the galaxy than you know," he said. "You reminded us of something we had forgotten. Something essential." Yuna bowed respectfully. "I just answered a question. You are the one who asked it." Vorik laughed, a deep rumbling sound. "Yes, I asked it. For 3,000 years. But you were the one who truly listened." He reached into his robes and pulled out a small object. It was a crystal, shaped like a star, glowing with soft inner light. "This is a memory stone," Vorik said. "It contains everything I have learned in 10,000 years of life. My experiences, my wisdom, my mistakes. I want you to have it." Yuna stared at the stone in amazement. "I cannot accept this. It is too valuable." "Nothing is too valuable for someone who has given me hope," Vorik said. "For 3,000 years, I feared that my riddle would never be answered. That beings across the galaxy would never understand what truly matters. You proved me wrong. That is worth more than any treasure." Yuna took the stone carefully. It felt warm in her hand, like holding a piece of the sun. "Use it wisely," Vorik said. "And remember, the greatest wisdom is not in knowing things. It is in understanding them." The ship arrived, and Yuna said her final goodbyes. She hugged Bora, who was crying purple tears. She shook hands with Taiho, who had learned to express affection in the human way. She waved to the crowds of students who had gathered to see her off. As the ship rose into the sky, Yuna looked down at the academy one last time. It seemed smaller now, less frightening than it had been 2 years ago. Or perhaps she had just grown larger. She thought about everything that had happened. She had come to the academy feeling small and worthless. She had spent months believing she had nothing to offer. And yet, in the end, she had given the galaxy something priceless. Not because she was smart, not because she was strong, but because she was human. Humans understood trust because they had to. They were weak and short-lived, surrounded by a universe that did not care about them. The only way they could survive was by working together, by trusting each other, by building bonds that could withstand any storm. It was their greatest strength. Hidden in plain sight, Yuna looked at the memory stone in her hand, then at the stars outside her window. Somewhere out there was Earth, her home, her family. She could not wait to see them again, to tell them everything, to hold them in her arms. But she also knew that her journey was not over. This was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries. And Yuna, the small human girl who had answered an impossible riddle, was ready to explore it. After all, if she had learned anything from Vorik, it was this: the universe was not conquered by strength or intelligence. It was understood through trust. And trust was something humans had in abundance. Yuna stood in the spotlight of 1,000 eyes. She could feel the weight of all those stares pressing down on her, heavy as mountains. Her throat was dry, and for a moment, she forgot how to speak. The great hall was silent. No one moved. No one breathed. They were all waiting for this small human to say something, probably expecting her to fail like everyone else had failed. Yuna thought about sitting back down. She thought about saying she had changed her mind. Who was she to answer a riddle that had beaten the greatest minds in the galaxy for 3,000 years? But then she remembered her father's words. Make us proud. She remembered her mother's tears. She remembered the long journey through space, the loneliness, the fear, the hard work. She had come too far to give up now. She took a deep breath and spoke. Trust, she said. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. The room remained silent. Some of the students leaned forward, not sure if they had heard correctly. Louder, please, Varric said. His 6 eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin tingle. Yuna swallowed and spoke again, louder this time. The answer is trust. A murmur went through the crowd. Students looked at each other in confusion. Trust? That was the answer? It was so simple. So basic? Surely it could not be right. Varric raised his hand, and the room fell silent again. Explain, he said. Yuna's mind raced. She had to explain her answer. She had to make them understand. Trust grows stronger when it is broken, she began. Her voice was shaking, but she kept going. When someone breaks your trust and then works hard to earn it back, the trust becomes deeper than before. Because now you know they truly care. Now you know they are willing to fight for your relationship. She paused and took another breath. Trust becomes visible only in darkness. When times are good, everyone seems trustworthy. But when times are hard, when there is danger, or suffering, or fear, that is when you see who really stands by your side. The darkness shows you the truth about the people around you. The room was completely still. Yuna could feel every eye on her, but she was no longer scared. She was speaking from her heart now, from a place of deep understanding. And trust is given freely, but it can never be bought. You cannot pay someone to truly trust you. You cannot force it or fake it or manufacture it. Real trust is a gift that comes from the heart. It is beyond the reach of money or power or technology. She stopped speaking. The silence stretched out for what felt like forever. Varric stood motionless on the stage. His 6 eyes blinked slowly, one after another. His ancient face showed no expression. Then, slowly, something changed. His eyes began to glow with a soft golden light. The symbols on his skin pulsed and brightened, and his mouth curved into what was unmistakably a smile. 3,000 years, Varric said. His voice was thick with emotion. For 3,000 years, I have asked this question. And for 3,000 years, I have received answers about physics and philosophy and mathematics. Answers about the nature of the universe and the structure of reality. Complex, intelligent, sophisticated answers. He walked toward Yuna, his staff tapping against the floor. But no one ever gave me this answer. No one ever spoke about something as simple, as basic, as fundamentally important as trust. He stopped in front of Yuna and looked down at her. She had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. You are correct, Varric said. The answer is trust. The room exploded into noise. Students were shouting, talking, arguing. Some were cheering. Some were protesting that the answer was too simple, that it could not possibly be right. But Varric raised his staff, and silence fell again. I know many of you are confused, Varric said, turning to address the whole room. You do not understand how such a simple answer could be correct. Let me explain. He walked back to the center of the stage. When I was young, I believed that the universe could be understood through logic and mathematics. I believed that every problem had a solution that could be calculated. I was like the Nexari, proud of my intelligence and certain of my knowledge. His voice grew softer, sadder. But over 10,000 years of life, I learned something important. The universe is not just made of matter and energy. It is also made of connections, relationships, bonds between beings that cannot be measured or quantified. He looked at Yuna again. Trust is the foundation of all connection. Without trust, there can be no friendship, no love, no cooperation, no civilization. It is the invisible force that holds societies together. And yet, because it cannot be seen or measured, many species ignore it. They focus on what they can calculate and forget what they can only feel. Taiho stood up, his silver face showing disbelief. But teacher, trust is just a human concept. Other species have different ways of connecting. Vorik shook his head. No, trust is universal. Every species that has ever built a civilization has done so on a foundation of trust. They may call it by different names. They may experience it in different ways. But the core idea is the same. The willingness to believe in another being, even when there is no guarantee. He turned to look at the entire audience. This is why no one could answer my riddle. Because the answer requires not intelligence, but understanding. Not knowledge, but wisdom. Not logic, but feeling. Bora leaned close to Yuna, her purple face glowing with joy. You did it, she whispered. You actually did it. Yuna could not believe it herself. She felt like she was dreaming. Around her, the chaos of voices continued. Some students were approaching her, wanting to talk, wanting to understand how she had found the answer. Others were walking away, frustrated and defeated. Vorik raised his hand again for silence. There is an old saying among my people, he said. The wisest being in the room is often the one who listens more than they speak. The human Yuna came to this academy feeling weak and small. She thought she had nothing to offer compared to the great minds around her. He smiled at Yuna, a warm and fatherly smile. But she had something that many of you lack. She had humility. She had empathy. And she had a deep, instinctive understanding of what truly matters in the universe. Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes. She thought about her parents, so far away on Earth. She wished they could see this moment. She wished they could know that their daughter, their ordinary daughter, had done something extraordinary. From this day forward, Vorik announced, let it be known throughout the galaxy that the riddle has been solved. And let it be known that it was solved by a human. A species that many consider young and primitive. A species that many overlook. He raised his staff high. Perhaps we should all take a lesson from this. Perhaps we have been looking in the wrong places for wisdom. Perhaps the answers we seek are not in the stars or in our equations, but in the simple truths that live in our hearts. The room erupted in applause. This time, Vorik did not silence them. He let the sound wash over the great hall, celebrating the moment that would change history. Yuna stood in the middle of it all, a small figure surrounded by giants. Finally understanding that size and strength and intelligence were not the only measures of worth. Sometimes, the smallest voice speaks the loudest truth. The day of the riddle arrived faster than anyone expected. 3 months had passed like water flowing through fingers. Yuna had studied hard, made a few friends, and learned things she never imagined possible. But she still felt unprepared. The great hall of the academy was filled with students. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species sat in rows that stretched up toward the ceiling. Giant screens floated in the air so that everyone could see the central stage clearly. The air was thick with tension and excitement. Yuna sat between Bora and Taiho. Her 2 friends had become important to her during the past months. Bora was gentle and wise. Taiho was proud and competitive. Together, they had helped Yuna survive at the academy. I am ready, Taiho said confidently. I have studied every theory, every philosophy, every scientific principle. Whatever the riddle is, I will solve it. Laura looked less certain. I have a feeling that studying will not help us today. Una said nothing. She was too nervous to speak. Her hands were shaking slightly, and her heart was beating fast. She did not know why she felt this way. She had no intention of trying to answer the riddle. She just wanted to watch and learn. The lights dimmed, and the room became quiet. A single spotlight appeared on the stage. And then, slowly, Varric walked into the light. He looked even older than before. His gray skin seemed thinner, and his movements were slower. But his 6 eyes were bright and sharp, moving across the audience like searchlights. "Welcome," Varric said, his voice filling the hall without any microphone. "This is the moment you have been waiting for. The moment I have been waiting for 3,000 years." He paused and looked around the room. "Before I ask my riddle, I want to remind you of something. This is not a test of intelligence. Many intelligent beings have failed. This is not a test of knowledge. Many knowledgeable beings have failed. This is a test of understanding. True understanding of the universe and your place in it." He raised his staff and tapped it against the floor. The sound echoed through the silent hall. "Now, listen carefully. I will only ask this once." Every being in the room leaned forward. Una held her breath. "What grows stronger when it is broken?" Varric asked. He paused, letting the first part of the riddle settle into their minds. "What becomes visible only in darkness?" Another pause. The audience was completely still. "And what is given freely, yet can never be bought?" Silence. Complete and total silence. Una felt the words echo in her mind. They were simple words, easy to understand. But put together, they formed a puzzle that seemed impossible to solve. "You may answer at any time," Varric said. "Simply raise your hand, and I will call on you. But be warned, you only get one chance. If your answer is wrong, you cannot try again." For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, hands began to rise. A tall being with crystals growing from its head stood up first. "The answer is light," it said confidently. "Light grows stronger when waves are broken and reformed. Light is visible in darkness, and light is given freely by stars." Varric shook his head. "Incorrect." The crystal being sat down, looking embarrassed. Another hand rose. A floating cloud of gas spoke in a voice like wind. "The answer is knowledge. Knowledge grows stronger when old ideas are broken. Knowledge illuminates darkness, and knowledge is freely shared." "Incorrect," Varric said again. More hands rose. More answers were given. "Time," said one student. "Incorrect." "Energy," said another. "Incorrect." "Love," said a small alien with many eyes. Varric paused at this one, seeming to consider it, but then shook his head. "Incorrect." Taiho raised his hand eagerly. Varric nodded at him. "The answer is consciousness," Taiho said, standing tall. "Consciousness grows stronger through breaking old patterns of thought. Consciousness illuminates the darkness of ignorance. And consciousness is freely given to all living beings." Varric looked at Taiho for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "Incorrect." Taiho sat down heavily, his silver face showing shock. He had been so confident that the answers continued for hours. Hundreds of students tried, offering every possible answer they could think of. Philosophy, science, mathematics, art, nature, technology. Everything was suggested. Everything was rejected. Una listened to each answer carefully. Some of them sounded right to her. Some of them made sense. But each time, Varric said the same thing. Incorrect. As the hours passed, fewer and fewer hands rose. Students began to look tired and defeated. The excitement from the morning had faded into frustration and confusion. Bora leaned close to Yuna. "What do you think the answer is?" Yuna shook her head. "I do not know. Every answer sounds reasonable, but none of them are right." "Maybe there is no answer," Bora said. "Maybe the riddle is impossible." But Yuna did not think so. She remembered what Warwick had told her in his office. The riddle was about something that could not be measured, something that did not follow rules, something that the Nexari, with all their intelligence, could not understand. She closed her eyes and thought about the riddle again. What grows stronger when broken? She thought about bones. When bones break and heal, they become stronger at the breakpoint. But that was too simple, too physical. What becomes visible only in darkness? She thought about stars. Stars are always there, but we can only see them when it is dark. But that was also too simple. What is given freely, yet can never be bought. She thought about many things. Love, friendship, kindness. These things were given freely, and they could not be bought. But they did not fit all three parts of the riddle dot. Then something clicked in her mind. She thought about her parents. When her father lost his job 5 years ago, her family had nothing. They were poor and scared. But they did not give up on each other. They trusted that things would get better. And things did get better eventually. She thought about her friend back home, a girl named Ga. Ga had lied to Yuna once, and it had broken Yuna's heart. But over time, Ga had proven herself again and again. Their friendship had grown stronger because of that broken moment. She thought about the darkest times in her life. The times when she felt alone and afraid. And in those dark times, she had learned who really cared about her. She had seen the true nature of the people around her. Trust. The word appeared in her mind. Like a light turning on. Trust grows stronger when it is broken and rebuilt. Trust becomes visible only in darkness, when times are hard and you learn who you can really count on. And trust is given freely, but no amount of money can buy real trust. Yuna's heart began to beat faster. Was this the answer? It seemed too simple. Too human. She looked around the room. Students were still trying to answer, still offering complex theories and philosophical arguments. No one was talking about something as simple as trust, but maybe that was the point. Maybe the answer was simple. Maybe it was so simple that no one thought to say it. Yuna looked at Vorik. The ancient teacher was watching the students with patient eyes. He did not look disappointed or frustrated. He looked like he was waiting for something, waiting for someone to understand. Yuna raised her hand before she could stop herself. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She felt Bara and Taiho turn to look at her with surprise. Varik's 6 eyes all focused on her at once. "Yes, young human," he said. "You wish to answer?" Yuna stood up slowly. Her legs were shaking. Thousands of aliens were staring at her, the small human girl, from a small planet in a small corner of the galaxy. She opened her mouth to speak. And the room held its breath. Vorik moved slowly across the platform, his staff tapping against the floor with each step. The sound echoed through the silent room like a heartbeat. Every student watched him, waiting for him to speak again. Yuna noticed that even the oldest students, beings who had lived for hundreds of years, looked nervous. This was not just any teacher. This was a legend. And legends were not to be taken lightly. "Before I ask my question," Vorik said, "let me tell you a story." He waved his hand, and the air above the platform began to glow. Images appeared, floating in the light like dreams made solid. Yuna saw planets and stars, civilizations rising from nothing and building great things. "Long ago," Vorik began, "when I was young, there was a great empire called the Nexari. They were the most advanced species in the galaxy. They had conquered time itself. They could see the future and change the past. They believed they knew everything. The images showed tall, beautiful beings with golden skin. They built towers that reached into space. They created machines that could think and feel. They seemed perfect. The Nexari were proud, Vorik continued. They believed that intelligence was the highest virtue. They measured everything by numbers and logic. If something could not be calculated, they said it did not exist. The images changed. The beautiful towers began to crack. The golden beings began to fight among themselves. Their empire started to fall. One day, a simple farmer from a forgotten planet came to the Nexari emperor. The farmer was poor and uneducated. He could not read or do mathematics. But he asked the emperor a question that the emperor could not answer. Vorik paused. His 6 eyes looked around the room. The emperor gathered all his scientists and philosophers. They worked for years trying to answer the farmer's question. But they could not. And because they could not answer a simple farmer's question, the Nexari lost faith in their own intelligence. Their empire collapsed within a generation. The images faded away. The room was silent. What was the question? Someone asked. It was Taiho, the silver alien sitting next to Yuna. Vorik smiled. Or at least his mouth moved in a way that might have been a smile. That is exactly what I have been trying to find out for 3,000 years. The question was lost when the Nexari fell, but I have spent my entire life trying to recreate it. He tapped his staff against the floor 3 times. My riddle is my best attempt. It is not the same question the farmer asked, but I believe it captures the same idea. The same truth that the Nexari could not understand. Yuna felt something strange in her chest. It was like the feeling she got when she watched a beautiful sunset or when she heard a sad song. It was a feeling that had no name, but it was very real. I will ask my riddle at the end of this semester, Vorik announced. That gives you 3 months to prepare. Think deeply. Question everything you know. And remember, the answer is not found in books or equations. It is found somewhere else entirely. With that, Vorik turned and walked out of the room. The students immediately began talking among themselves, their voices loud and excited. This is it, Taiho said. This is why I came to the academy. I have been preparing for this moment for 50 years. 50 years? Yuna asked, surprised. Ho looked at her. My species lives for 500 years. 50 years of study is not much for us, but it will be enough to solve the riddle. He said it with such confidence that Yuna almost believed him. But she had read about the riddle. She knew that thousands of beings, much smarter than Taiho, had tried and failed. In the following weeks, Yuna did her best to focus on her studies. She had classes in physics, biology, history, and language. Each class was harder than anything she had experienced on Earth. The other students understood things instantly that took Yuna hours to figure out. She often stayed up late in the library, reading and studying. The Academy Library was the largest in the galaxy. It contained the knowledge of 10,000 civilizations. Yuna could spend 1,000 lifetimes there and still not read everything. One night, while studying alone, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned and saw Bora, the purple-skinned alien who had helped her on her first day. You work very hard, Bora said, sitting down across from Yuna. I have to, Yuna replied. Everyone else is so much smarter than me. If I do not work hard, I will fail. Bora tilted her head. Is that what you think? That they are smarter? Of course. They understand things I cannot even imagine. They have abilities I will never have. Bora was quiet for a moment. Let me ask you something. When you see a sick person, what do you feel? Yuna thought about it. I feel sad for them. I want to help them feel better. And when you see someone crying, I feel their pain. I want to comfort them. Bora nodded slowly. Do you know that in my species, we do not feel these things naturally? We have to learn empathy through years of training. It does not come easily to us. Yuna was surprised. Really? But you seem so kind. I have trained for 200 years to be kind. For you, it is natural. You were born with something that many species spend their whole lives trying to achieve. Yuna did not know what to say. She had never thought of empathy as a special ability. It was just part of being human. The riddle, Bora continued, is not about intelligence. Vorik has said this many times. It is about something else. Something that cannot be learned from books. What is it? Yuna asked. Bora smiled softly. If I knew, I would have answered it already. As the weeks passed, the academy became more and more focused on Vorik's riddle. Students formed groups to discuss possible answers. They built complex theories and wrote long papers. They debated and argued late into the night. Yuna listened to their discussions, but she did not understand most of them. They talked about quantum mechanics and dimensional theory and universal constants. They used words and ideas that were beyond her knowledge. She felt more and more like she did not belong. One day, she decided to visit Vorik during his office hours. She wanted to ask him about the riddle, to understand what she should be looking for. His office was at the top of a tall tower. Yuna had to take 3 different elevators and climb a long staircase to reach it. When she finally arrived, she was out of breath and nervous. The door was open. She knocked gently and stepped inside. Vorik's office was small and simple. There were no books or screens or fancy technology. Just a few chairs, a window looking out into space, and Vorik himself, sitting quietly with his eyes closed. "Come in, young human," he said without opening his eyes. "I have been expecting you." Yuna sat down carefully. "You knew I would come?" "No," Vorik said, finally opening his eyes. All 6 of them looked at her at once. "But I hoped you would. I have been watching you since you arrived." Yuna felt uncomfortable. "Why?" "Because you are different," Vorik said. "You do not try to show off your intelligence. You do not compete with the other students. You simply try to learn and understand." "That is because I am not intelligent," Yuna said. "I am the weakest student here." Vorik made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Intelligence is not everything. The Nexari had more intelligence than any species in history. And yet, they could not answer a simple question." He leaned forward, his ancient face full of something Yuna could not identify. "Tell me, young human, what do you think my riddle is about?" Yuna thought carefully before answering. "I do not know, but I think it is about something that cannot be measured. Something that does not follow rules." Vorik was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Perhaps," he said, "you are not as weak as you think." The spaceship was bigger than any building Yuna had ever seen on Earth. It floated in the sky above Seoul like a silver mountain, blocking the sun and making shadows across the whole city. Yuna stood on the landing platform with her small bag, her heart beating fast in her chest. She was only 22 years old, and she was about to leave her planet for the first time. Her mother stood behind her, crying softly. Her father tried to look strong, but his eyes were wet too. Yuna turned to them and smiled, even though she was scared. "I will be okay," she said. "It is only 2 years." 2 years is a long time, her mother said. "You will be so far away. If something happens, we cannot help you." Yuna hugged her mother tightly. She could smell the familiar scent of her home, the cooking oil and flowers that always filled their small apartment. She wanted to remember this smell forever. "I have to go," Yuna said. "This is a chance that comes once in a lifetime. The Galactic Academy only accepts 1 human every 10 years. I cannot say no." Her father put his hand on her shoulder. He was a quiet man who worked in a factory all his life. He never went to university. He never traveled outside Korea, but he always told Yuna to dream big. Make us proud, he said simply. Yuna nodded and picked up her bag. She walked toward the spaceship without looking back. She knew if she looked back, she would start crying and never stop. The inside of the spaceship was cold and bright. Everything was made of smooth metal that reflected light in strange ways. Yuna followed the signs that were written in hundreds of languages she did not understand. But there was also Korean, so she could find her way. She entered a large room filled with other beings. Yuna stopped and stared. She had seen pictures of aliens before, but seeing them in real life was completely different. There were tall creatures with blue skin and 4 arms. There were small furry beings that floated in the air. There were things that looked like walking trees, and things that looked like clouds with eyes. And then there was Yuna, small, brown hair, 2 arms, 2 legs. Nothing special at all. She found a seat in the corner and sat down quietly. The other aliens did not look at her. They were busy talking to each other in languages that sounded like music or clicking or thunder. Yuna felt very alone. The journey to the Galactic Academy took 3 weeks. During this time, Yuna stayed in her small room and studied. She read about the Academy, about its history, about the thousands of species that studied there. The Academy was built on a space station that floated between 3 galaxies. It was the most famous school in the known universe. Only the smartest beings from each planet were allowed to attend. Yuna did not feel smart. She was good at her studies on Earth, but here, she was nothing. The other students could do things she could not even imagine. Some could read minds. Some could calculate numbers faster than any computer. Some had lived for thousands of years and had wisdom beyond anything Yuna could understand. She was just a human girl from a small country on a small planet in a small corner of the universe. When the spaceship finally arrived at the Academy, Yuna stepped out and looked around with wide eyes. The space station was enormous. It was like a city floating in space, with buildings made of crystal and light. Thousands of beings walked through the halls, each one different from the last. Yuna found her room in the human section of the dormitory. It was small but comfortable. There was a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out into space. She could see stars and distant galaxies. It was beautiful, but it made her feel even more alone. On her first day of classes, Yuna got lost. The academy was too big, and all the hallways looked the same. She walked in circles for an hour before a kind alien helped her find her classroom. The alien was named Dora. She was from a planet called Velnus, and she had purple skin and gentle eyes. She was studying medicine at the academy. "You are the human," Dora said. "I heard about your species. You are very young in the galaxy." Yuna nodded. "Humans have only been traveling in space for 200 years. We are still learning." Dora smiled, or at least Yuna thought it was a smile. That is not a bad thing. Sometimes the young see things that the old cannot. Yuna did not understand what Dora meant, but she thanked her for the help. Her first class was called Universal Philosophy. The classroom was round, with seats arranged in circles around a central platform. Hundreds of students sat in the seats, representing dozens of different species. Yuna found a seat in the back where no one would notice her. The teacher had not arrived yet. The students were talking among themselves, discussing complex ideas that Yuna could barely follow. She heard words like quantum consciousness and temporal ethics and dimensional morality. She did not know what any of these things meant. A tall alien with silver skin sat next to her. He had 3 eyes and a long neck, and he looked down at Yuna with curiosity. "You are human," he said. It was not a question. "Yes," Yuna said. "I am Taiho," the alien said. "I have studied humans. Your species is interesting. You are weak and short-lived, but you have spread across many planets very quickly. Yuna did not know if this was a compliment or an insult. "We try our best," she said. Taeho made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Trying is not enough in this academy. Here, you must succeed. The weak do not survive." Before Yuna could respond, the room became quiet. Everyone turned to look at the central platform. Someone was a writing dot. The teacher walked slowly into the room. He was older than anything Yuna had ever seen. His skin was gray and wrinkled, covered with strange symbols that seemed to glow faintly. He had 6 eyes arranged in a circle around his head, and each eye moved independently, looking at different students at the same time. He wore simple robes that touched the floor, and he carried a staff made of some dark material that absorbed the light instead of reflecting it. This was Vorik, the most famous teacher in the entire galaxy. Yuna had read about him. Vorik was over 10,000 years old. He had taught at the academy for longer than humans had existed. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species evolve and go extinct. And he was known for one thing above all else: his riddle. For 3,000 years, Vorik had asked his students the same question. And for 3,000 years, no one had ever answered it correctly. Students from every species, geniuses and scholars and philosophers, had all tried and failed. Yuna felt a chill run down her spine as Vorik's eyes passed over her. For a moment, one of his 6 eyes stopped and looked directly at her. Then moved on. "Welcome," Vorik said, his voice deep and ancient like stones grinding together. "To those who are new, I am Vorik. To those who have been here before, you know why you have returned." He paused and looked around the room. "This year, like every year, I will ask my question. And this year, like every year, I expect no one will answer correctly. But perhaps I will be surprised." The students shifted nervously in their seats. Yuna saw Taeho lean forward with interest. Even Bora, who sat a few rows away, looked tense. Yuna just felt scared. She was not here to answer riddles. She was here to learn, to survive, to make her parents proud. She did not want to be noticed, but sometimes fate has different plans.